For this comparative study, I will be exploring race and ethnicity theory through the films In the Heat of the Night and Get Out. Race and ethnicity theory has three main pillars of discussion: representation, identification, and spectatorship, all in relation to the viewer. Representation regards itself with how an ethnic character is portrayed and how that can affect the manner the ethnic group is considered, as well as the stereotypes. Identification regards itself with how an audience member is able to identify and resonate with the character, and how that affects their perception. Spectatorship encompasses the previous two, and how gender, sexuality, and race can affect the entire viewing experience as an audience. It has notable critics and theorists such as Henry Louis Gates, James Arthur Sneed, Cornel West, Bell Hooks, and Hazel Carby, who critique politics based on binary thinking, those that exclude cultural diversity by thinking in that way, and how blackness is constructed in politics and culture. Films often rely on racial stereotypes as a shorthand to quickly establish characters, but it often comes across as being racist. There have been problematic representations since the beginning of cinema, such as Mickey Rooney's character Mr. Yonioshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's, a racial stereotype of a character that is played by an entirely white American actor, making an example of Yellowface as well.
But that was 2 weeks ago! You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell!
The most prevalent stereotypes for black people in film is the black guy dice first in horror and the criminal in most other genres. The former finds its origins in how small black characters' roles were in the past in order to keep them away from the leading roles, making them easily discardable. The latter stems from the issues in the criminal justice system, social imbalances, and the racial profiling that has become such common practice. The justification for these films is that they both follow a black man entering a predominantly white society where racism is prevalent, and their struggle to exist within it. In the Heat of the Night explores how racism is still prevalent in the South compared to the North in the 60s. Get Out explores how racism is still present in modern society and how it continues to present itself. In the Heat of the Night, adapted from John Ball's Heat, the first novel in the mystery series with Detective Virgil Tibbs. Set in the early 60s, it follows the story of Virgil Tibbs, a black police detective from Philadelphia, who becomes embroiled in a murder investigation in the small town of Sparta, Mississippi, with police chief Bill Giuseppe. In the late 50s to 60s in Mississippi, racism and racist crimes were rampant problems. In addition, Jim Crow laws were still being enforced, which perpetrated racial segregation. This film serves as a direct commentary to that, putting a black man in the powerful position and proving the racial stereotypes wrong, and exploring the progressive social changes in this period of change. Get Out follows a young black man, Chris, who spends a weekend with his white girlfriend, Rose Armitage's family, who he is repeatedly assured are not racist. Chris faces microaggressions, gaslighting, and a fusillade of casually racist behaviors from the Armitage family, where it discovers the family's eugenic plot of fusing old white people into young black people's bodies. In July 2016, discussion of the Black Lives Matter movement increased due to the shooting deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile at the hands of the police officers. This all culminates in discussion about the treatment of black people in modern society. Although, when Peele had the idea for the film was back when Trump wasn't president and the Black Lives Matter movement was yet to be founded. Get Out portrays these issues in an extreme and horrific manner, though the themes and ideas the film sparks still hold true. In the Heat of the Night uses racism as more of a driver for the plot while exploring the experience of black people in that time period, while Get Out uses racism as its horror plot, using something that is largely universal and how it presents itself subconsciously to explore racism in the modern period. One similarity between the two films is the use of racial stereotypes. In the Heat of the Night, Tibbs goes against the racial stereotype of black people being dumb and criminals by outsmarting everyone. Slight high angles and split lighting is used on Tibbs and low angle and high key lighting on Giuseppe, as well as the other cops initially to show the power imbalance. As the scene goes on and Tibbs reveals himself as a detective, the lighting and cinematography shift. The lighting on Tibbs slowly shifts towards high key lighting, and he is now shot from eye level. Giuseppe's lighting shifts towards split lighting and is now shot from high angles. This shows the shift in perceived power. At the beginning, Giuseppe believes himself to be in control, being extremely relaxed and playful, while Tibbs maintains a respectful manner unless provoked. And even after his identity is revealed, he does not laud it over Giuseppe, rather he continues being respectful, which shows that the racist views are often founded in ignorance and prejudices, rather than founded in a person's character. Additionally, later on in the morgue scene, Tibbs' black skin on the corpse's pale white skin creates a stark contrast between the two, and the crossing of a racial taboo of the period. This is shown through close-ups and long takes of Tibbs examining the body. The camera follows his hands throughout the entire examination, showing the intricacies of his work. Intercut with his examination are shots of Giuseppe watching. His awestruck reactions show how Tibbs is subverting the racial stereotype in his mind, and how himself is changing, which is reflected in the rest of the film, as they are gradually in more shots together and the same shot types become used on them at the same time, as well as through their casual conversations towards the end of the film.
Don't you get just a little lonely? No lonelier than you, man.
This all shows how Tibbs, and by extension all black people, are struggling to exist in a white society without facing widespread racism. Put in a different society than the one Tibbs grew up in, he is able to use what is on the inside to allow people to see deeper than the color of his skin. In Get Out, it subverts the stereotype trope of the black guy dies first. This is subverted by having a black man as the protagonist, and where the other black characters in the film, save one, are in actuality white people. This is done through following Chris throughout the film and where other characters come and go. At the gathering scene, Chris stands out in every shot, as he is included in almost every shot of the scene, and is the only one in a bold blue color. Additionally, when he is in the shots, he is framed larger by placing the camera closer to him or lowering it. Something different this film does because of its genre is the inclusion of many horror tropes such as the creepy suburban artifice, gaslighting the protagonist, mind control, and bizarre medical experiments. For this film, it uses warm colors to create an artifice for the family, where during the day and inside the house it's always warm. Outside the house without the artifice, it is almost monochromatic with the cold colors of black, white, and blue. Additionally, the cold colors continue to be present with the flashback in the second place. The contrast between the two shows the falsehood of the Armitage family, which shows how racism continues to present itself in modern society in a subtle manner, without being as overt as the period of In the Heat of the Night. It emphasizes the film's theme of the two-facedness of white wokeness. Get Out shows Chris's struggles to coexist with the thinly veiled racisms, while going against the trope of bending the knee, and shows his and black people's resilience in resistance and defiance of the white oppression and racism. Another similarity is how the films portray the way black people cope with racism. In Get Out, Chris roughs the Armitage family's microaggressions by keeping quiet and not pointing them out.
But, I do know Tiger.
Is it better?
Wow.
Fairer skin has been in favor for the past, couple of hundreds of years. But now the pendulum is swung back. Black is in fashion.
Even when Rose is talking to him about it alone, Chris continues to keep quiet. This is done to not threaten the white people's safety, and by extension his own. The film uses cinematography to show how boxed in Chris is and how he is doing what he must, by cutting to a close-up on his face and his reaction when the microaggressions and fake platitudes are spoken. This is an example of how the racism in the past is so present but more subtle, where black people are still conditioned to please and not disrupt white people in fear of the fallout on themselves. Chris also tries to be more vocal with the black people, code switching, not knowing that their brains have been swapped, leaving Chris stranded in this white society. When Chris sees Logan/Andre, the mise-en-scène of the weather changes from overcast to sunny, and the lighting on Chris becomes brighter. He tries to code switch with Logan, but Logan doesn't understand it fully.
Good to see another brother around here.
Yes, of course it is.
And after Chris talks to him, the weather goes back to overcast. This shows how black people find asylum within each other from white people, but for this film it shows the struggle and fear where black people become so conditioned by the white society that they lose themselves. Throughout all this, Chris maintains a respectful facade, going against racist stereotypes, but it is when his own life is threatened that is when he fights back in a violent cathartic moment against the white racists, symbolizing that black tolerance for prejudice isn't infinite, and they can always fight back, and black violence is just a means to an end to stop the intense white racism. Similarly, in the Heat of the Night, Tibbs maintains his vocalness as a free man without resorting to violence, but keeping quiet at times as well.
You're pretty sure of yourself, ain't you, Virgil? Virgil, that's a funny name for a nigger boy that comes from Philadelphia. What do they call you up there?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Because of the setting, Tibbs' vocalness is already in defiance of the social dynamics in Mississippi, but this would only go so far without turning violent, hence him still remaining silent at times. Such as when he gets arrested. The scene uses high-key, high-contrast chiaroscuro lighting to show two perspectives to the scene and the themes. The close-ups on Tibbs, framing his face under his tan/white shirt, shows that he is trying to maintain non-violence in order to not escalate the situation and put his own life at risk. The close-up on Officer Wood at the beginning of the scene shows how his views are constrained and confined to his racism at this point. His small smirk before he starts speaking emphasizes this, where he finds some joy in his racist actions, reflecting the extent of the racism in him and by extension in the town. This is further driven home by the Endicott scene. The scene uses a range of long to close-up shots with individual shots for Tibbs and Endicott nearing the slap, which shows the power imbalance that continues to exist between white and black people in the American South. Then Tibbs' slap is the signature moment of defiance for this film, where Tibbs' retaliation represents how black people will no longer be subject to the inequality, and it is a refusal to the bigotry he endures daily.
Was Mr. Colbert ever in this greenhouse, say last night about midnight?
This is reflected in the cinematography. Now when it cuts to Endicott, he is in an over-the-shoulder shot of Tibbs, with Tibbs taking up most of the right third and Endicott being forced to stay on the left third line. This represents the power imbalance as being fixed, and shows that Endicott isn't as powerful as he thought himself to be. This emphasizes the black struggle to exist in a society where racism is so prevalent, and further highlights the strategies that black people use in order to do so, and in the same way as Get Out, framing the resort to violence as a necessity to fight white racism. As said prior, both films follow a black man going into a white society, and they are able to show how their respective characters cope with racism in their respective time periods, though the films are different genres. In the Heat of the Night uses its thriller whodunit genre to explore and juxtapose racism-influenced views against reality. It explores black people's constant need to prove themselves in order to go against the racial stereotypes. And with the film setting in an earlier, less progressive period, it allows for Tibbs to be more forward with how he combats the racism and exists in the white society. While Get Out falls into the horror thriller genre, it uses racism as the horror plot to portray racism from black people's perspective, where the current casual racist remarks and microaggressions are a form of dehumanization covering up real racism, but leads to black people living in white societies having an instinctual fear instilled in them because racism continues to be such a prevalent problem that sometimes becomes hard to determine.